Welcome to the Manitowish Waters Historical Society presentation, Camp Mercer Interpretive Trail, History of Camp Mercer and Other Cultural Discoveries. This video is designed to accompany other videos that are more trail specific, to give an overview of the camp and other cultural sites. Starting with Camp Mercer, the Civilian Conservation Corps, or State Forest S-79, has left an amazing legacy in the Northwoods for us to explore and share regarding the cultural traditions of environmental stewardship. In June of 1933, Camp Mercer was established. You can see the images of the entrance gate with the famous mound sign. The earthen mound, undeveloped, still is present at the main gate, and a sign is there to describe it for users. You can see the camp background on the right and the many barracks of the quads, and on the left you can see the Ranger garage. Thousands of unemployed young men enrolled in the CCC. This provided direct relief to families, as $20 out of the $25 paycheck these men made monthly were sent home so their families could provide food and pay taxes so they wouldn't have their homes and farms foreclosed on. The postcard below is typical of the kind of items that could be purchased at the post exchange or canteen, so Camp Mercer enrollees could share their experience with their families and friends. In the Northwoods, there are three different kinds of CCC camps. On the far left, you see the State Park CCC, that's up in Copper Falls. The middle arrow is a state forest camp. This is Camp Mercer. You see there, 79S, run by State Forest Service. And all the way to the right, you see the federal forest camps for Nicolet and Chequamegon National Forests. To the far southwest, there are also erosion control camps. The Army ran the CCC camps, and the men living on the camps followed Army discipline, signing up for 6 months terms of work. Camp Mercer was led in the field by state forest rangers, whether fighting fires as illustrated by the image to the lower left, or planting trees, building highways, putting in telephone lines, or fish rescue work. These were the important environmental duties and environmental reclamation that was conducted by the CCC in the Northwoods. In the summer of 1933, tents were the first housing for the enrollees. Notice on the left the old wall tents along the Manitowish River. As you look to the right, you can see the barracks beginning to be built with some stud walls being raised. The tents also are in the far left part of the corner. The winter of 1933 and 34 challenged Camp Mercer recruits, and they couldn't get all their barracks completed to avoid Old Man Winter, who came in and left inches of snow on their blankets as they slept in the tents. It wasn't long after this that the barracks were completed and the men could move inside. This 1935 map illustrates the buildings at Camp Mercer just before the huge administrative camp upgrade. You can see below in the panoramic image that Camp Mercer quickly grew into a sprawling CCC camp with the Manitowish River to its right. The larger administrative barracks, as the left-hand picture shows, were added in 1935. This became a sub-district camp for the entire Northwoods. Also in 1935, Camp Mercer was split, and 100 men were sent from Camp Mercer to Pattison, where they created another state park, like Copper Falls. Camp Mercer was not only creating new camps, but was going to have oversight over camps in the region. Basically, 10 Northwoods CCC camps will be under the supervision of Camp Mercer, and the administrative staff would travel to each of these camps trying to continue good work and good conduct by the enrollees. The Ranger Garage is one of the more interesting destinations along the Camp Mercer Interpretive Trail. You can see the archaeological sketch on the upper right that shows the ruins of the building featured to the left. That was the Ranger Garage, and it's kind of fun to go and see how they used the cement structure to lift their trucks up off the ground and perform maintenance. But these trucks, as you see in the lower left, were key to getting the men in the field. On the lower right, the Army marshaled the men into the trucks every day for work, except Sunday, and off they would go to do their best to help Northwoods environmental reclamation. One of the areas they went to was Rest Lake, where they dismantled the old windmill tower built in 1912 and erected a 100-foot modern fire tower that would be also manned by CCC personnel. Fire tower construction was done in the wintertime, allowing the enrollees to do other work like firefighting and planting trees in the spring, summer, and fall. Making concrete was challenging, dining outdoors in a winter picnic, but we can see on the far right the footings for the Rest Lake Tower dug in the ground by hand and set up by the CCC enrollees. Ultimately, Rest Lake Tower to the left, Mercer Tower to the right, and many, many more were all constructed to create a network of lookouts to stop the fires that had plagued the Northwoods. Fire prevention also required communications, and CCC enrollees had to cut down trees for telephone poles. And then they would take those poles out into the communities, erect them, and string wire. So when those fire towers spotted a fire in the spring, they could report it back to headquarters and dispatch men to contain the fires. Sub camps were also created around Camp Mercer. In the center of the map on the right, you can see Springstead, Pine Lake, and Oxbow Lake by Presque Isle. 10 camps running from mid-April to mid-November were manned by Camp Mercer CCC enrollees who manned the fire towers and did projects in the area, and also could respond quickly to forest fires in their region to try and extinguish those fires before they grew too large. Spring was fire season, and drought in the Great Depression ravaged the Northwoods. Here you see CCC men from Camp Mercer fighting a blaze on the left, and to the right, taking a break after bringing a blaze under control. The CCC boys would use tractors to make ditches, as you see on the left, and they could hold the fire lines in the large blazes. The Powell Marsh Fire was one of the most vexing of all the blazes. Here you can see the large area of smoke pluming above a farmstead. We will also put in our comment section the link above to the Powell Marsh Fire for an in-depth discovery on the impacts of that devastating fire from 1933 and 1934. The fire situation was absolutely devastating. It required at Powell Marsh 600 to 700 men to battle the blaze. The forest fires were so fierce that some men could not go back and fight on the fire line. They instead decided to serve 30 days in jail. The stress from the fires would create an effect like post-traumatic stress. Education was important to the CCC programs, whether it's formal learning in an environment where they could make up credits and take classes, or on the right, go in the field and learn how to do work like heavy equipment operation. Importantly, the educational branch of Camp Mercer also published a newspaper, the Mercer Monitor. Currently, the Manitowish Waters Historical Society has 41 copies of the Mercer Monitor online for folks to take a look at. Many stories, updates, and important information are conveyed that bring to life what it was like to live at Camp Mercer from 1933 to 1942. The stories would be cartoons poking fun at their fellow enrollees, as well as athletic activities. Athletics were important at Camp Mercer. They did sports and competitions. You can see swimming, baseball, basketball, and yes, boxing was popular. The one that I wish we had a picture of that was more specific to Camp Mercer was canoe jousting, where people would get in canoes with a fellow in the front of each boat with a stick, and they would run canoes at each other and try to knock them out into the river. Other forms of recreation like archery, billiards, music, and faith in services by local clergy rounded out some of the opportunities available to enrollees at Camp Mercer. Proper medical care was essential, and as you look at the map in the upper right, right next to the officers' quarters, was the doctor's cabin. And on the other side of the officers' quarters was the dispensary or the infirmary, where people who had medical needs could have their needs met. The Mercer Monitor included a column called Infirmary Infections or Dispensary Infections that overviewed the medical needs of enrollees. One thing that I found to be fascinating is that they made batches of cough syrup 5 gallons at a time. Another point of the infirmary's history was that they provided medical aid in the shootout at Little Bohemia. At Little Bohemia, the FBI misidentified CCC enrollees leaving the bar and opened fire. Sadly, one CCC enrollee was killed and another injured. The Camp Mercer ambulance in the upper left responded, giving aid to all who were injured. Next to the dispensary or infirmary was also the officers' quarters, as you can see on the map on the left and the aerial photo on the right. The image to the left should give you a good idea what the interior of the office quarters looked like. This is easy to locate on the Camp Mercer Interpretive Trail, as on the right you can see the old base of the fireplace that is in the picture to the left. Dynamite was often used at CCC camps for road building, clearing beaver dams, and taking care of other obstructions. Here are images of blasting at Camp Mercer, which required special certification. Numerous dynamite shacks were built within Camp Mercer, and we will go to at least 2 of them on the trail. The more recent dynamite shack on the left is the only standing intact building left at Camp Mercer. It is a dandy and is on the western side of the trail. On the right, you see a comical Mercer Monitor cartoon where the enrollees are being mocked as having to read a manual as they try to blow up a stump. This absent-minded Camp Mercer dynamiter left dynamite on top of the stump, making the cartoon a little bit more ironic and comical. A unique feature of Camp 660 or Camp Mercer was a specially built mess hall. It didn't follow typical protocols for the CCC. It actually was a vertical log cabin. The log mess hall, as you see on the right, had vertical logs as illustrated by the yellow arrow. And at the base, as you see by the red arrow, in traditional fashion of the logging days, dirt was thrown around the base of the log cabin to keep out pests and frost. This creates a bermed effect. If you look at the left, this is the exact site of the mess hall, and the red arrow points to the berm. This is a nice connection for historians because if you look close, you see the shovels in the picture on the right that were used to throw the dirt and create the berm that is still there for you to see on the trail. When we review the CCC camp photo album, we also find that they did a lot of logging, as you witness on the left, and that they used to build the interior mess in the vertical logs. On the right, you see the kind of traditional log cabin that was used by pioneers and seldom ever seen on a CCC camp. This is truly a unique architectural feature. The mess hall was later converted into a post-exchange or PX or the canteen. It was where the CCC men would relax and enjoy some amenities that they could buy with their $5 a month that they're able to keep, or play some ping pong or billiards. Most ranger facilities were located where the state campground is on the eastern side of the trail. You see that marked by the yellow arrow on the map on the right. Here is the ranger cabin that was used from 1935 to 1936 before Camp Mercer CCC men could finish the brand new ranger station just north of Mercer, Wisconsin. Here we see the old ranger station looking over the Manitowish River to the left, and to the right we see the Camp Mercer boys building the new Mercer Ranger station. They even made the cement blocks that you see being laid by the masons. Recreation and pastimes at Camp Mercer followed Wisconsin traditions. Clearly, these activities would not be going on at camps throughout the country. Firearms are on the camp to help with deer hunting and taking of small game, and on the left, beer parties by enrollees who were most certainly underage were discovered by the Manitowish Waters Historical Society in private collections of Camp Mercer enrollees. Camp mascots, often gathered while fighting fires in the spring, became a central part of the culture at Camp Mercer. The fawn on the left was Diane the deer, who became a celebrity, and people would actually come from the town of Mercer and Manitowish Waters to be photographed with Diane the deer. To the right, you see a bear cub that also was rescued from a fire situation. Many other mascots were all part of the Camp Mercer culture. The closing of Camp Mercer came in 1942 as the United States marshaled men and resources to engage against the Axis powers of World War II. Here you see Bill Summers in the upper part of this image, who manipulated an Army officer and was able to rescue a lot of the material from the camp that were to be destroyed. And he shared them with the churches in Mercer, Wisconsin, so that they could be distributed to the people of need. As we end our presentation on Camp Mercer and the Camp Mercer Interpretive Trail, we want to say farewell and thank you to the CCC boys who did so much environmental reclamation throughout the Northwoods. Here we see them swimming in front of the 1933 tent camp because there was no shower house, living in the wilds of northern Wisconsin and making a difference. Importantly, we have other discoveries and elements to the Camp Mercer Trail. The new interpretive trail was put together by a partnership as indicated below by the logos of each participant, and a trail is laid out for people to follow with interpretive signs. Many of these interpretive signs explore unique cultural sites. There were several cultural sites that were found on the Camp Mercer campus that really were not part of the CCC. We're going to explore a couple of them right now. Before discussing the archaeological features in the next two cultural components, it's important for us to pause and review the laws as it applies to protecting cultural and historic resources on sites that are recorded in the Archaeological State Inventory. Public lands, like Camp Mercer, controlled by the DNR, are protected against any disruption of cultural sites. Private land is controlled by the private landowner who dictates how cultural resources are to be managed. Camp Mercer is a recorded site. It is protected under state law. It is illegal to do any digging, removing, or taking of artifacts. Sadly, one of the River Drive logging campsites has been looted decades ago by treasure hunters. This activity is strictly prohibited. The two River Drive logging camps are found at signs 22 and 25. You can see that the tradition of logging and river drive logging along the Manitowish Rivers makes perfect sense. Cornell University actually bought the property that Camp Mercer is on, and they then sold that to different logging companies. Many of those listening to this video might be surprised that Cornell University acquired 499,000 acres of prime pine land in Wisconsin that was sold at a profit and built Cornell University as part of the Morrill Land Grant Act. The land along the Manitowish River was still filled with pines, and the Laportes, in the winter of 1910 through 1911, did the last logging drive within the region. We're fortunate to have the images to the right that were donated from family collections to illustrate this important cultural tradition. The other River Drive logging camp, marked by sign 25 on Camp Mercer Interpretive Trail maps, shows a large berm area for the main cabin. You could see it in still form here on the left with a large dugout area underneath. We're going to use a video to the right to illustrate the whole run around that berm. Taking a look here from the west corner, you can see the berm go across the backside of the berm and the berm coming all the way back. This is an impressive camp, and this bermed area is relatively intact. Some have looted this site illegally, taking artifacts with shovels. The blacksmith shop directly across from this cabin site was terribly looted by treasure hunters. This activity is absolutely illegal and detrimental to preserving historic records. Moving now to features 23 and 26 marked by yellow arrows, these are our mystery features. We have brought in experts in logging and archaeology, and we have not been able to agree on what these features were used for. Let's take a look at them. Here's the feature 23, and it is much smaller than feature 26, but pretty good size. You can see that there is a large dugout area down to a big rectangular holding area, all below ground. Here's my archaeological sketch. We're looking at it from the inverse way out toward the river, and you see the run down and the rectangle area below. Much debate over this. Let's take a look at the video view. You can see its proximity to the river right next to it. The other feature shares that same proximity, and then again the runway down into the feature itself. If you have the opportunity to find a feature such as this, we would hope that you would share it with the Manitowish Waters Historical Society, because we're looking for corroborative evidence and features that can help us better understand this unique cultural element to the CCC campus. Enjoy the great views of the Manitowish River, the interpretive trail and signs, and amazing history along the remnants of Camp Mercer. As we just discussed, the histories on this property go way back past the days of the CCC to the logging era, and most certainly for indigenous communities who used this river for millennia.